Welcome to a video on how to set up Google Cloud Runner with the Google Cloud Platform. And this is definitely one of the trickiest things to do because I've configured this library to use a lot of different services. But I didn't want to just give blanket permissions, which may have been easier, but in the end of the day, would be more of a security risk. So I've chosen to do it this way, which should narrow down the permissions that you have so that they only work with the functions and the services that you want to use. But that does introduce a bit of complexity to it. So I've tried to make this more simple with introductions of functions such as CR setup, which will do a lot of the work for you. But obviously there are still some steps that need to be done manually, which I want to do. So what I'm going to do today then is demonstrate from the very beginning, from a new, fresh Google Cloud Platform project and a new, fresh RStudio project, how to configure it from scratch. And this is a one-time only setup that you have to do. Once it's all set up in your project in your RStudio, then you can just use it as I do all the time without needing to do all of this again. It's just that initial setup that you need to do for the first time. So this is the rough agenda that I've got for today. And really the sort of first bit is where you have to do a lot in the web console because we can't automate that bit. That's the bit where you're creating your project and getting your GCP client. But then when we're running the CR setup function, that then should do everything else in the console that you used to have to do manually. So that should hopefully make that easier. And then once that's all set up, then we also have this setup tests that can be done to make sure that everything is working. And if they all run correctly, then you should be able to do everything that are listed in the use cases here. So so here's the project that I'm starting off with, and at the moment this is just a blank project. I've got this is the presentation that you just looked at here in the R command here, but other than that, there's nothing else that can be looked at. So what we're going to start with then is in the Google Cloud Platform. Now this is a Google Cloud Platform I've just created. Called GCP Setup Demo. And I do recommend that you create a new project for this, simply because make sure that all the services are activated. In old projects it might be that Cloud Run or something like that isn't activated by default. If you set up a new project, then you know that these things are activated by default. And I will refer to the website as I'm doing this for how to do this. Just to make sure that I'm doing everything that I said we should do. And there it does specify you need to be the owner, and you've added billing to the account and all of that. And hopefully that's not too much trouble to do that. You can look at other tutorials to do that. But that's where I'm kind of starting. Okay, so the first thing then to do is to create this, we need to get this GCP client. Now the GCP client, you can find in, not I am an admin, but where do you find that? You can see it's still, yeah, here we go. So APIs and services. Now I've pinned some of these to my side there, but if you do a search up here as well, APIs and services, you'll find that there. And here, this is the first time I've actually gone to this screen. So a few of these will actually take a bit of a while to load the first time. And we haven't activated any APIs yet or anything like that, so we'll have to do that later as well. But we'll come across that. And these are the credentials. So this is the first thing we have to do. And what we want to do is create an OAuth to client ID here. And there's none there at the moment. Now it's giving you a little warning here that you're going to have to configure this consent screen first, and that's the pop-up that comes up when you're authenticating with a Google Cloud Platform, and that's done so that, to make sure that you're authenticating with the client, the project that you want to be authenticating with. But it's more, I mean, they definitely tightened this up a lot recently, with a few more requirements, and it's actually more difficult to go through this process. That's worth making the video just for that. But what we're going to do, we don't need to make a public client, because that would only be if you're making a public app, public-facing app. And for our purposes, it's only you that's going to need to use this client ID, maybe a few others. And so we don't need to have a public app, which means that the approval process is a lot quicker, and you don't need to go through waiting for anyone to do that. So if we try and create OAuth2 client details here, if we go up to there and click on that, we can't do that yet because we haven't got this configure consent screen that's popping up. So what we do is, and that's available here and here. So I'm going to click on that now and create this consent screen. Yeah, and it's got a few sort of things to learn about and all of this as we're doing that, but I don't think we need those now. Yeah, so here we're kind of sort of talking about it. Now, this may or may not be the same for you, but because I've on the G Suite or Google Workspaces now, then it's only available to, you can make it so it's only available to people within your G Suite users. So that's if you've got this this one up here. This is my G Suite, but you might have one there. If it's just you, I don't think it really matters. But if it's external, I think most people should add external here. And I'll actually do that as well, because we're going to always be in this testing mode and only available to users you add to your list of test users, and that's what we want anyway. So that's the more common case. So that's what I'm going to do here and create that. Okay, so this is the OAuth consent screen, and you've probably seen these around when you've authenticated with other services around the web. There's your name there, and it's all this screen that you need to configure. So what we're going to do is just call this the test Google Cloud Runner. And actually, with the way we're going to authenticate, you probably never actually see this screen. But that's my email there. You can add a logo if you want. Yeah, and all this. But you don't really need all of this unless you're actually going to public for that. Yeah, and yeah, sometimes you need to do but all of this is mostly because you want to do it publicly, and I don't think we need to do that for this. So we'll just save and continue. And this is, I've gone through this process before, and I've actually took some screenshots of this as I'm going on the website. So you can see here we're at this stage now to do that. And yeah, so now we're on to the next step where we look at the scopes. So yeah, we do need to add the scopes, and yeah, it's still there. We've actually got this bug where we can, yeah, everything is called BigQuery, but actually it's not BigQuery. So this is a cloud platform one. Now this is a generic scope, which is helpful to have, and it won't mean that all the users that you will have access to this cloud platform. It just means that the possibility of this client is that it can do the entire cloud platform. And as we're using lots of different services, that is handy to do. But yeah, it says BigQuery API. That shouldn't read the BigQuery API. It should say cloud platform. Yeah, but that's the one you want here. So it's the view and manage your data across Google Cloud Platform services. So hopefully they'll change that. Maybe by the time that you see this, they would have changed that. But yeah, but there you go. So now you update the scopes there. And these are sensitive scopes because you are accessing paid services. So if you were doing public, then you would have to go through an approval process to do that. But because what we're doing, we shouldn't need to do that. So yeah, so now we do it. So now is a good time to, this is where you actually add your users. Yeah, and I'm just going to add myself here. Do that, you add yours. But here you can actually add, other people in your organization as well, or something like that. Okay. So yeah, so here we've got the OAuth consent screen. It's just sort of summarizing what we've done. And we're going to put it back to the dashboard. So yeah, so this is pretty much it for that. Now, if you were like publishing the app, then you would now click on that, and this is where it says, okay, you've actually not done enough to become an official app. You need to do all this, and you know the approval process is pretty heavy. You need to show a YouTube video showing how you plan to do all that, and a written explanation telling why you need exactly. So you know, it's pretty serious to do so. But yeah, but for what you need to do, you just need to do that. So the OAuth consent screen is done. That means that when you go to credentials here, now you should just be able to create your credentials. That should appear here. So we can go through that process of creating credentials. Now we can do it. It gives us to. So if you're going to, yeah, for other purposes, maybe for other apps that you might be going for this and looking at this for some other reasons on Google Cloud Runner. But if, say, you were making it for Shiny apps or OAuth 2 web apps and things like that, then you'd need a web application type. But we actually just need a desktop app because that's the one we're going to do. And you could call it just a just so you know what it's called in the platform. And yeah, so now you get in flash up of this, and I'm going to delete all this so it doesn't matter, you know, that you're seeing these. And it's not too sensitive, these at the moment, for what you're doing, but yeah, it's, yeah, don't publish them probably. But there you've got the client ID and our desktop app that we're doing. And then what we want to do is actually download a JSON example of this. And this is what you do when you click on this button over here. That will give you your JSON file. Okay, so now I'm going to download this to a folder, and what I usually do is actually rename these like that, and I'm going to put it in there. Now this folder should be outside, it should be available globally, and outside of any projects that you're doing probably, because we're going to point to that one location for all projects later on. So I'm just putting it into my demo folder here at the moment. Okay, so that should actually be mostly it for the client IDs. But I think what we're going to do now is activate some of the APIs. So when you go to the APIs, now, I mean, it will, when you're trying to do it, and it will flash up an error message saying you need to activate this API, go to this URL when you're doing it. When you're trying to work with the CR setup in R later, but we're just going to sort of try and go ahead and skip that bit so that we've got that. So this is all on the website as you're going through. Yeah, we're downloading things. So yeah, it just gives you a list of some of the APIs that you're going to have to do. So actually, it gives you the URL, so you can actually just paste that straight in here, and that should take you. So this is an API that enables that client ID to create the authentication keys that you want. So that's a good one to have. So yeah, you just go there and click the button. There we go. So that's that one activated. And this is a similar thing to deal with service keys and all of that. And if you're not clicking on the links, then you'll have to sort of search for these APIs in the search. But Cloud Resource Manager is number one. And then finally, Cloud Run is not on by default, so I'm just going to also activate that one. Okay, so hopefully it turns on. There we go. And there might be an App Engine on later for scheduling, but I'll just check that as it comes. But I mean, I got these links because it comes up in the error messages whilst you're trying to do them. So if there's anything else, then we'll tackle that later on. Okay, so that should be it for the GCP sort of setup for the moment. So now I'm going to switch to R itself. And this is assuming you've obviously download the package as well by oops, something like that. I've got it installed, so I don't need to do this. Or if you're getting development version, then you would do this if you want sort of newer features that are not on CRAN yet. But the CRAN version is pretty recent at the moment, so you should be alright. But all that being said, you should then be able to run this. Now, this is actually already been configured in there, but I'm going to actually make it ignore that for that, and I'll show you how at the moment. So yeah, and you can do that just by, I'll do this just by running CR setup. So yeah, so what's going to happen basically is when you're doing CR setup, it makes an r.r environ file. And you can choose to have that either in your home location here. So if you click on home, then yeah, there's my R, and that's the one that's carrying on my configuration. And this is sort of R wide what happens to do that. And I use that for lots of libraries and lots of it. But what we're going to do is set it up in the project, and it's largely the same, apart from that it will put the r.r environment file in the same folder as the project that we're looking at. And say whoever wants to make that global, then all you need to do is copy that R environment file and move it to the home directory like I've got. But just for this demo purposes, you do it. And then, I mean, this is a successful end state. This is sort of what's happened. But what we're going to do is actually run this, and we are going to set it up for just this project. So yeah, so it comes up with saying the version, which is this is my current version from GitHub, and its setting and all this. So we're going to configure and check all googleCloudRunner settings. And this is where, if it was for all R sessions, which is the recommended one, then it should just say, okay, everything's done. So yeah, if we click on that, then yeah, we should be all. And yeah, you see most of those are all done. And this is just something if you want the cloud build thing to do. But yeah, we'll skip all that. But what we're actually going to do for this demo, if I can, yeah, just to make sure we're all there. We're going to do CR setup, and then we're going to push one, and then what we're going to do is do the project only one, and you would do maybe one, but or follow me in two, and then move it across later. So what that will do, at the very first time you do it, it's actually created this R environment file straight away. And what that will do then is make sure that when you restart R, then it's going to take this one apart and not the home one that's already configured. So if I demonstrate that, if I go to, oh, you can't see it on my screen, but if you go into RStudio, you go to Session and Restart R, or Command F10. I'll just do that. There we go. Like that. And this R environment file we've got here is currently empty. So that's showing why. So what's going on there. So now, yeah, because we've got a new R session, then when we do that, now there's actually no authentication set up as well. And now we just keep running CR setup until it's all done, basically, in what we're doing. So push one, project only. Okay, so now it's starting to get into the actual configurations what you're doing. So the first one is, do you have a Google Cloud Project ID to use? And hopefully you have, because you just set one up, which is the Google Cloud Project ID. So we say yes, and then we need to put in the ID. And if you've forgotten, you go back to your Google Cloud Console here, and then you can see the ID here, which is this one. So this is, and that'll be different for your one, for what you're doing. But this is the one for me. GCR setup demo. And there we go. And then what that does is that it should populate this .r environment file for you. And that's pretty much what this setup function does. It just populates. So if you wanted to skip the function and just populate this .r environment file yourself, that is what is described. What originally you had to do it's sort of telling you all of these environment files that you had to set up. But hopefully it should do that for you. But now we're going to carry on in what we're doing. So we set up the GCR setup demo. Now we're going on to the next one. And every time you restart R, you're going to make a new way of doing that. So we've configured our project now. So now we're going to configure looking at the client ID JSON that we downloaded from the console. And this is for this project only. Have we downloaded the client JSON file, ID file? Yes, we have in this case. So I will make sure I set the right. Have we downloaded the client? Yes. Are you ready? Yes. So now we're going to look for this file. And this is a setting that is going to look at this client JSON file that we downloaded, and from this client JSON, that knows what keys to request and all that. And if we read this, we've sort of validated it that it works. We found the client ID project, and now it's configuring this R environment. So when you look in this file, you should see that this has been added to your R environment file, and this should be the location of your client JSON key that you downloaded. And you need to restart R every time you update the R environment to load it into the system. So that's why it's saying you have to restart R here. So we'll do that. And now when we load on the new session, then it should have loaded that into the system. So now when we do that, we can see that we've got a valid. Okay, so now we've got a valid client ID. And we can see that this has been populated here. Then now we are going to create the actual authentication key that will, and this is important to keep secret, because this gives the library full access to all the services that you're looking at. So I'm going to say in provision a service account key, and you can do this manually yourself in the Google Cloud Console, but this is a function to try and help you with that. And you can go for the default Google Cloud Runner, but I am going to call it Mark's Demo for this purposes. And now this will pull up the test client that you made in the previous steps. So if you allow that, then when you go back, it should have gone through all of this and shown you all of the that it's created a thing successfully. Now it's prompting you to move the file because this is so important, and this is the one that is created here, that you shouldn't keep this in a project that you might be checked into GitHub or Git, for example. And what I recommend is putting it in the same place as where you put your authentication, the client ID JSON. We'll just call it a different name. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to move this to the same folder, and this is outside of a sort of neutral place. And this is what all of your full fetches will do that. Once you've done that, then have you moved the file? Absolutely we have. And so now we've got the service key, and so we've actually created the key, but we haven't actually pointed it yet at the right authentication environment variable. So that's what this will do. So now it's going to tell, okay, where did you just put it? So if we go back to this demo folder that I've got, you can see that's the default name for it, Google Cloud Runner Authorkey. So we can select that one. So when you do that, it should show you now that you've got this GCP auth file now populated in this R environment. which is all good news. And it will fail because you need to load that in. So if we do another restart of the R session, and we should start to see, yes, we should start to see some sort of positive feedback coming in here now. It's telling you that it's set the scopes successfully and successfully authenticated. So now we're really cooking. We can really start to do things, and you're all authenticated now and you can start to do stuff. But now we're going to sort of set up some other settings that will make all the functions in the library work. So the first thing is Google Cloud Storage Bucket. And you may have one already, but this we're going to go through the. If you do have one already, then you'll point to it when we click. Do you want to set up a Google Cloud? Do you have an existing cloud storage bucket you want to use? We're going to say no, but you could have one, and you have to put in the address for it. But if we say no way, do you want to make a new cloud storage bucket? Yes. And we're going to call it GCP setup demo bucket. And this is a globally unique name, so you have to pick something which no one else has thought of. So now it's created that bucket, and again, if we look at the REnviro, we should see that this GCS default bucket has been set. And then if you want to check that, well, first of all, in the setup demo, if you're in your credentials here and we refresh the page, what you should see, yeah, we've got this demo service account that was created out from the step before. And then if we look in the storage bucket here in this project, then we see that we've got this setup demo bucket. That's just been set up as well for you, and that's generally useful for lots of things you can use. So yeah, so now we've got that. So now each time you kind of successfully do one, then it's suggested that you reload the library and check again as you work down the list. So it's okay, got the DAT, we've got the project set up, we've got the authentication set up, we've got a default bucket set up. Do you want to set up a Cloud Run reason now? Well, absolutely, let's do that. So let's, there's actually there might be more now, so I need to check on this, but at the time of writing it was only these ones that were available. So we'll pick Europe West 1 to do that, and we'll restart R and check that in a minute. And then we want to do a Cloud Scheduler email. So this is the email that Cloud Build will use to authenticate when it's doing all the jobs on your behalf, and in Cloud Scheduler. So just to keep things simple, it's easier to use the sort of same email that you're using locally, so that when you're testing, it's. So yeah, and what it's doing as well is just giving you a little prompt to check that Cloud Scheduler is active, because actually sometimes for new projects it's not. So if you go to this, do the right URL here, and what did happen is that you needed to have an App Engine instance activated first in some cases. So we'll see if this is the case for here. But this looks okay. So you've got, yeah, so you can create a job. Yeah, so this is actually what you need to do. So you click on create job. Now you've got to say where your cloud jobs. But because this is App Engine, you can only get one App Engine per Google Cloud project. So I usually pick Europe, but you can pick somewhere close to you. Yeah, because Cloud Scheduler is using App Engine in the background. That means that you have to set you can only set it once per project. So it's just initializing now, and this is definitely something which you only do once per project. But whilst that is running, I will just yeah, look at this. Say, do you want to use the email from your JSON service account authenticate? So that's saying, do you want to use the same authentication that you're doing? And this has just finished here. So Now you could create your job here, but we know that if we can do it here, then we're good. So Cloud Scheduler is this one here. So create job, go straight to there now. You don't have to configure the region or anything like that. Yeah, so we're going to use that email. Yeah, that's good. And then so now what this is saying is, what services do you want to set up for the Cloud Build service account? So this is what Cloud Build will use when it's running, and these are the roles that one can do. So it depends what you want your Cloud Build to do. If you wanted to start, say, data flow jobs, then you'll need data flow permissions. If you want it to do BigQuery jobs, then you need to give it BigQuery permissions, all of that. So what I've kind of set a default here of Cloud Run Secret Manager is really useful for downloading secrets in your cloud builds. This is a secure way of keeping secrets, so I really recommend doing that one. And BigQuery if you're using BigQuery. If not, then maybe you don't want to use it. And cloud storage. So if you do option 2 here. If you skip this, then you have to sort of set it up yourself. But otherwise, you do that, and this will let you say you have to sort of give permission to this cloud build email to them to do so. Yeah, so this is saying that the cloud build does not exist yet, which in that case means that when you go to cloud build, then when you go to settings, we haven't actually activated the cloud build API yet here. So what we need to do is actually activate that API as well. Actually, I need to update the documentation to do this. Here, just add that. So enable that API. And what this will do is we'll create the cloud build email that is going to sort of act on your behalf. So I believe we go back to the service accounts. We should now have so it's set this all these different sort of roles and things. So if we go to cloud build now and go to settings, then it's still saying, I'll just check that, refresh. Okay, there you go. So so now this service account exists, and that was the one that the error message was looking for to do. And you could just click it here, which ones you want to give it access to, if you've got anything on this list that you want to do. But you can do more on this list. You can roles not listed, you can imagine it in the session, or you can use this function. So what we're going to do is try that again. Like that. Do you want to set up the Cloud Run region? We've just done that, so actually I think if we just restart then it should load in all of these sort of settings that we did before. So you can see the region and the build leader have already been done. So when we do that, project only, so now we go straight, so it's found all the regions and stuff, so we don't have to set up that again. And then we're going to go all of below again, and because we've done it before, then it's cached it, and cache the authentication. Okay, so now it's given those roles to all of the to this Cloud Build service email, and once you see this, then you should be able to move on to the CR setup test. Have I spelled that? Yeah, that's good. So so let me just do it one more time, just to sort of validate that we've got our environment. This has all of the different environmentals. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to set there, and then when we restart and run setup again, then it should actually just say, found everything here, and yeah, all of that is done. So yeah, setup is complete. So yeah, that's great. So now you should be able to run setup test. And what this will do, you can choose which test to do, but yeah, we're going to select all tests. And now this will actually run through some of the tests that are used to test the library just on a day-to-day basis. But it's going to run through running cloud build in Docker. So that's making sure that the cloud build, once you've got that, then you've got access to a whole host of use cases to do that. It's going to check that Cloud Run. You can deploy an R-Plumber script to Cloud Run, and one that can activate with PubSub as well. So yeah, so that would be a really nice one to have, so that you can have R APIs running, and then just running R script in Cloud Build, so that you can schedule R scripts and all of that. Yeah, and then scheduling it is the next one. So it's going to start sort of opening these windows, and it does this also just to sort of introduce you to what Cloud Build is doing. And Cloud Build has these build triggers here, which we haven't got any sort of setup here yet, and a sort of history. And you can see this is the first job that's ever run in this project, which is going to be this one. And yeah, that's always good to see lots of green ticks, so that one's good, and it should return in the R console here when it has done that. And now it's moving on to the next one, next test. And these tests all take about 5 minutes to run. So the first one was actually creating the Docker file for the project, and then this one is, don't know what this is doing actually. Yeah, it's setting a destination for another destination for a Docker file. It's building another Docker file from the deploy folder, and you can get rid of the web URLs if you don't like doing it, and just sort of watch this this one here. And then now it's onto the Cloud Run deployments. So now it's running through deploying the Docker images that it was creating in the last step, and these Docker images contain an R API, and this is the command that it's running. You can see that here, and yeah, and this is like all the steps, and first it does that one and does that one, so you can see that we're in step 0 still here, and it's deploying this to the region. And because this is the first sort of setup and the first one run in this project, and it might take a bit longer than it does when you're running it on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, and this 1% of time out, 2%, basically you have 600 seconds, which is what, 10 minutes. So it's sort of counting down to that, and if it times out, then for other builds that you have the option of increasing that timeout. But it's just giving you an idea. And you can launch these without the browser coming up as well to monitor it, if you just want to sort of run it in the console there. Yeah, it's just really to sort of give you visibility about what is happening in here. This one is still deploying the Cloud Run application. Did we activate Cloud Run? I think so, yeah. So it should, once it's done, yeah, you can see now that it's in Cloud Run, it's starting to deploy this example. And it's waiting for that to go. We've got like allow unauthenticated for this one, but you can have authenticated as well, which will only, yeah, so you have private APIs basically running the R example. And the actual example that it's running is the one that's on the website here. to Google Cloud Runner. It's actually running this one here. This is an API that's working. Yeah, so yeah, it should have. Yeah, this is the example app. It's launched that example Cloud Runner app, which it just prints that it works, but also there are other functions in there. Yeah, so you see if you get the root, then you get that it works, but you can also go to the hello endpoint as well to get the hello. If we get that that URL here, you can see it's hello world. So we can see that that is that app that has been deployed. Now it's running a test for seeing if you can deploy an R script. So this is just you have an R script and you want to sort of have it running in the cloud as you're going. And you see this is a very simple R script we've got here at the moment. It's just listing some files. The library dplyr is just basically demonstrating that you can run R code that is based on this Docker image, and this is a Docker image which has a tidyverse installed. So yeah, this is all commands that would only work if you had the tidyverse working. You can see that completed successfully there. Yeah, and then we've got a schedule as well. So you can see and if at any time you want to rerun the tests, perhaps individually, then you can always go back and run in sort of individual ones here. So the cloud scheduler here, it actually will delete the test afterwards as well, so you don't have this R script sort of running all the time. Yeah, but yeah, once you get all of those green ticks and it's all working, then you should be ready to look at the use cases that are on the website. And yeah, there are many sort of use cases that you can use for I mean, this is what I'm using it for. So you know, there's all this sort of R development stuff, just CI, CD uses of that, but then running private microservices on Cloud Run and triggering an I function, deploying Shiny apps. Pretty much everything I need to do really for when I'm working with R. So yeah, there's loads and loads and loads and loads of things that you can do with it. So hopefully, if you get this sort of set up all happy with, and if we sort of look at our, I mean, basically at the end of the day, it's sort of filling in these environment variables as well that you've got here, and turning on some APIs in your Google Cloud Console. But yeah, it's definitely more complicated than maybe it should be. But if any suggestions on making it simpler would be much appreciated as well to do that. So thank you very much, and yeah, enjoy.